Hello, and thank you for coming to my presentation on Retaliate, Bleed, League Start, Gladiator. So, why Retaliate? The main reason you would want to be Retaliate is for this right here. You have Lucky Block, which becomes 90% for both attack and spell block, which is just incredible defensively. So, how the Retaliate skill works is that you're going to block something, and that will proc your cooldown. And then you will be able to, for the next duration, this can scale a ton of different ways, be able to do this ludicrous amount of damage right here. Importantly, this cannot be evaded and causes bleeding guaranteed, so you don't need chance to bleed and you don't need accuracy rating. But our damage reduction is going to be good just because we're a tanky build, but also 90% spell and attack block feels incredibly nice, especially into the late game. So, as I mentioned, the accuracy and bleed chance don't matter too much to us, but also attack speed doesn't matter much to us since we end up kind of feeling like a cooldown skill. The cooldown's like pretty low. You don't need to worry about it too much. You can do Goratha ping pong. Basically, there's a ton of stuff that lets you activate your retaliate skills by using other retaliate skills. I mean, you can play it like that, but it gets clunky to build. It can sometimes get clunky to play. I don't know that I suggest it. I'm an RF main, and I kind of consider this RF 2.0 to a degree. The amount of tankiness you get from having armor, endurance charges, a ton of max life, you can go blood magic, especially in the early game. That feels great. As well as the block is just incredible. And on top of that, because you have this like good solid bleed base, you end up doing multiple millions of damage without too much investment, which feels great for getting all four of your voidstones quickly. So, our defensive mechanics. For Fizz and Ellie, we have endurance charges, of course. They're broken. We invest into them because why wouldn't you? You can go Comb Sign if you want. That's good too. We have Molten Shell, which is just good generically on every build that has armor. And we get Fortify from either Tree or the Retaliate support gem, depending on your preference and how you want to build it. Physical damage reduction, we have armor, we have Fizz taken as Ellie. There are some ways to get this. I wouldn't worry about it too much. You can put it on body armor if you really want with Cloak of Flame, but it's just important that you get that if you can. Um, Elemental, we're going to get maximum resistances since we're so close to Marauder. You're definitely going to be picking that up on the tree a lot of the time. And then for Chaos, we just have 75 resistance, which is just good enough. Important mechanics. So the Hateful Accuser is a super big deal on this build. Pre and post Penance Mark is a massive breakpoint, and it will fundamentally change how you play the skill. Without this, I wouldn't suggest Volatility, Restless Coil, or Sadism. I probably wouldn't suggest Sadism anyway, but you can play how you want. But both Restless Coil and Volatility massively increase our damage potential if you're just constantly hitting the enemy. But that becomes basically impossible without this ring. So, disclaimers, don't play this build if you don't understand it. Do not take my POB as gospel. This is how I plan to play it, but you may want to play it a different way. This is supposed to be a shell. You can make a strong character based on this, but any singular point isn't important unless it enables something that is important, which you'll be able to tell by looking at it, or if it's incredibly high damage or tankiness. Basically, use your judgment. But any generic one-hand axe is good. Any of these mods, this is how you're generally going to be building it. But the items, especially in the POB, are not super important. So now we're going to look at the POB that I made here. So this is the general overview of one way that I like to build. This is with the penance mark. I just take this wheel for damage over here. But we're going to look at the default here because this is the kind of fundamental way that you're going to be playing it if you're just trying to progress to tier 16 maps. So we take these just because we have a lot of endurance charges, so percent armor, some AoE, maybe some damage feels pretty great. Versatile combatant though is pretty much mandatory. Getting that much spell block can be very difficult, but with versatile you can pretty easily cap out your block chance here. I mean we could undo it and then we have 95 block, and that's great, but your spell block really suffers. And if you're only blocking attacks, again, it activates your main skill, so you're gonna feel pretty bad. I like to take a lot of bleed wheels, of course. I take a few damaging ailments, damaging ailments deal damage faster. But you don't want to take everyone, and if your skill starts feeling kind of inconsistent, you could consider unspecking some of those as well. Um, Blood magic is just irreplaceable in the early game. You don't have to solve mana. You get one aura for free. That's basically always going to be Pride. I played through Gauntlet with this build as well, and I didn't feel like I needed Determination pretty much at all when I was progressing my gear pretty effectively. Just generic damage nodes for the most part. You get your endurance charges, you get your life. I don't know. I mean, you can read a POB. Yeah. Oh, important note, ascendancy points. So this is somewhat personal preference, but I don't really like this. You can do this kind of a ping pong thing where you have your main skill, which is Lacerate, and then you have your secondary, which is Crushing Fist, and that works. But it feels weird, and I don't like it, and I would prefer to just click my one button all of the time. So Lucky Block is essential. Importantly, this is only if you bluff recently. So at the start of your maps, it may feel a little bit weird, but it kicks off pretty quick. This node is awesome, especially since it means that your shield basically doesn't matter. You can just put pure defensive stats on this. You don't have to worry about your block chance. This is 23, but I don't care because now it's 50. Bleed Explode is just incredible. Aggravate, you can get Aggravate in some other ways. I've seen versions that just purely rely on this node. You use like Blade Storm, or you use any kind of fast hitting multi-hit that you can kind of just place. There are a couple of them. But I don't like that because, well, it increases your single target DPS because, of course, you're not spending an ascendancy node here. It's inconsistent, and it doesn't work against packs, and I like one-shotting rares, so this is just going to be what I'm going to do. One other thing important to note is you can absolutely spec into this here. Arguably, I should have this. Actually, I'm just gonna do that. But having these resistances feels really nice, and you don't need these. Like we have enough, and we have endurance charges, and it'll feel fine without this. But this is probably a good wheel to take. And of course, Prismatic Guard skin, like it's just incredible as well. Little trick I like to do is sometimes going Diamond Skin early in progression, just to kind of solve that early resistance, because that can be sometimes an issue. Like you can go Lyra, for example, but I can just have 20% resist here, and then I can unspec it as soon as I get enough resist on gear. So I'm not too worried. Don't pay too much attention to these affixes. You want generically good stats on your axe. Physical damage is obviously great. Flat Fizz is great. Dot multi is great. Fizz dot multi, the veiled modifier, which will now be craftable for maps, obviously feels really good as well. So any kind of life, armor, resist that you get on this is just good. And then you're going to kind of be transitioning to Resistless Coil and Hateful Accuser when you get the currency to buy some uniques here, which will very, very aggressively increase your damage. If we look here, and I go here, and what's yeah, because you don't need expert in this field. Then you go here, you can see that the damage increase is pretty stark. And that kind of a damage buff feels really good. But it's important to kind of look here, and this is true for most bleed builds. I feel like people maybe don't consider this as much as they need to. The average for bleed roll here. So if you're only hitting once, you're not getting this. This assumes that you're hitting off cooldown every single time, 100% attack speed, full damage uptime. And if you're playing something like Maven, that's just not going to happen. So you kind of need to be considerate of this. This is still worth it, just because like the damage increase right here is huge. But it's something that you need to consider, and I really don't like it for early maps, especially since you don't need this damage in most tier 16s. Anyway, so that's basically what I got going on there. Oh yeah, this is they still don't have this mastery working, so that's a manual configuration. Don't worry, I'm not cheating. This is how it's supposed to be. Anyway, so I'm just going to show a map really quick so you can get an idea. I really like to farm Harvest early with this build, but that's, personal preference. Oh, Wildwood.
I can't do this just yet.
Oh, important note, this is the ping pong variant because I deleted my Gauntlet character since it's not very strong. But the play pattern ends up being pretty similar, and anytime you see Crushing Fists, that's the only time that's actually doing anything. So you don't need to be too worried about that. harvest in here somewhere. Find. There we go.
This way, exactly. Don't let him make a mess.
Just gotta get that first hit, and you can pretty much just here. Oh, that's another important note. With the mark skill itself, because you are creating these minions, it triggers your block, but it also can trigger your explode, which feels really, really nice against some tankier enemies, or in this case, Harvest first. So the damage isn't the best in the world, but as you can see, I'm taking just entirely no damage here. There's nothing that's dealing any meaningful amount to me, and I can kind of just sit here forever. And I'm like even forgetting to press the mark sometimes, and I'm definitely not ping-ponging properly, but it just kind of doesn't matter. This POB will be in the description along with the planned one and the one for my Gauntlet character, which it's not the end of the Gauntlet character's progression. I didn't save that POB because once you get past a certain point, you don't need to be doing a POB to figure out what's wrong with your build. But it should be a pretty good idea of how you might want to build something like that if you do want to play this in some kind of a hardcore progression environment. Get this last guy here. There we go. Oh, that's another kind of nice thing. Since this build has such weird scaling, it actually gets so much physical damage that I can leech. So my mana right here is solved by leech, even though I'm a bleed skill and I have awakened deadly ailments on. Just because I do so much base damage that it still does considerable damage. Small note, I have wolves on here. It doesn't matter. It's just a craft that I had lying around because, settlers was going on. But you absolutely don't need this. It doesn't matter. This is just kind of a reasonable axe that I had at the end of last league. So this was my league starter character for last league. So I think it works. I like it. Pick up a tincture if your damage is really suffering. Yeah. Thank you for watching.